Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. Bully gets concussion legally. Growing up, I played hockey from kindergarten to my senior year of high school. It happened more by the fact that when my parents put me on skates at the age of 3, I surprised them by more or less learning to skate in one session. I was like that with most motor skills, a fact that would haunt me later as I got older. As I aged, I developed into a body more built for the offensive line in football. But the constant exercise and massive calorie requirements of ice hockey kept me in good shape through high school. It did mean I was generally 40 or 50 pounds heavier than everyone else on the ice. And while it did not affect my top speed, it did affect my acceleration. The predictable result was that I was always passed over for the traveling teams, and I gravitated to football when I was a defensive lineman. By the time I was in high school, I more or less played hockey for fun and the exercise. I never made the high school team. This is in Minnesota, so it is much bigger deal there. One of the reasons I loved sports so much was that I had a mild speech impediment and I had a tendency to slur my words if I did not speak carefully. Naturally, I was an easy target for bullies, especially in the 90s when schools were doing their level best to end physical bullying, in essence punishing me harder if I ever retaliated physically for the daily verbal torment I received. Entering my senior year and failing to make the high school team for the fourth and final time, I walked into my junior gold locker room to find an annoyance I knew. We will call him A for the time being. He was 2 years younger and was a scrawny little brat who liked to harass people verbally. I mostly ignored him. I had moved to the area the year before I started high school, so I did not have the friends the other kids grew up with. And unfortunately, this was the type of community that would freeze out people they did not grow up with. A was the kind of person who would target isolated people. He would not dare go after people with their friends. Since I spent my time mostly alone, he would try to harass me. But the obvious difference in size, that senior year I was 6'3", 250 pounds of muscle from football, ice hockey, track and field, shot put, and summers spent in the weight room, and the fact that I pointedly ignored him didn't give him much. While I ignored him, I did pay attention to what he did to others. In addition to harassing people of both genders verbally, he was also handsy, and more than once have been slapped by girls for groping them while passing them in the halls. He was also inextricably able to get himself out of trouble, like that which should have gotten him suspended or expelled multiple times. By the time hockey season started, I really was starting to hate A. Within the school, I was more or less powerless to do anything about it without getting myself expelled. And all I could do at the time was simply bide my time and hope I had a moment where I could get him caught or get revenge. I ignored A as I got dressed, and we went through the opening basic drills for practice until we got to a 4-chicken drill. The drill is meant to get kids to be motivated going after puck in the corner after it had been dumped in the corner, and also learn to prevent yourself from being hit from behind in the process. A thought a lot about his skills, and to his credit he was able to move well, though the credit he made was erased by his habit of slashing people with a stick. I thought he would show me up and made sure it was him against me. The first time we went through the drill, he made it to the puck first and tried to dart away. But I knew he was going to make it first this time, and had instead set up to hit him. He was short enough that he hit the boards instead of the glass. I wasn't at full speed, more than half to 3/4, but the fact that I was more than 100 pounds heavier left him a crumbled mess on the ice. With him on the ground, I grabbed the puck and skated away with it. And to piss him off, I went down the ice to the other side of the rink and dumped the puck into the unused net. Our goalie was doing reaction drills off ice with a coach and a tennis ball. When I returned to the near blue line, A was there bruised and seething. He started running his mouth, but our coach shut him down. "If you want to play with the big boys, you better be ready for the hits, A," the coach told him. The coach was the father of one of our goalies, and both of them readily hated A. "If you're mad, then hit it back, legally," he told A, meaning for A to take the Gordie Howe approach and get your revenge without breaking the rules. The coach also had known me for 5 years as I had been on his son's team. Goaltenders tend to like the big defenders who shove people away from the crease and punish people who crash the net on them. By this point, I was well into the coach's good graces, and he knew my usual trick was dealing with smaller, faster players. We set up the drill again, and this time I was on the outside and the coach fired the puck so A would be the trailer. I could hear A coming up from behind me, and I guessed that he would cross-check from behind. The kind of dirty move referees almost never call smaller players on when they hit bigger players. Not wanting to take a wooden shaft to my back, I waited until I was nearing the goal line and then hard stopped. Letting my stick in my left hand, I used the lefty stick to touch the puck while plating my feet and dropping my shoulder. A crashed face first into my right shoulder. I had timed it nearly perfectly. He had just enough time to slow marginally and leaned away backwards, but he could not prevent the hit. In addition to the hit to the face, he promptly fell backwards, slamming the back of his helmeted head into the ice. I had lost control of the puck and turned, grabbed the puck, and slowly went back to the line. By the time I reached the line, A was fumbling with the door latch to leave the rink and went off the ice. This was the last time we saw him at our practice, and A played for a U16 that year in a town about 30 miles away. Everything I had done to A were legal moves. Both time I hit him were to control position of the puck or to brace for a hit I knew was coming. A was conspicuously absent from school that week. I found out later that he had a concussion. His mother tried to get me kicked off the team, but the coach and the other parents did not like her, and most of them hated her kid anyways. She was also my mother's boss and tried to get her fired. My mother worked for the school district and she filed a complaint, and also started documenting A's mother's behavior. A's mother was nearly as hated as he was for more or less the same reasons. Eventually, my mother transferred to a different job in the school district, and A's mother eventually overstepped and was fired for cause. She had been stealing from the district for years. A never tried to annoy me again, and he avoided me at all costs after that. In most cases, I never got a chance to get even with bullies like him, and he was a real tormentor for kids his age. But getting the chance to crush a bully without any recourse at all felt really good. Next story, entitled "Mother Calls the Cops on Me for Trespassing on My Own Land. Gets Evicted." Backstory: for most of my life, I was raised by my grandfather. Nothing was wrong with the family life or anything. Just a few sets of circumstances that's a whole other story in itself. We live in a suburban area surrounded by woods, and he owns about 10 acres into the woods with the boundaries clearly marked by stone walls. One of these stone walls separated my grandfather's land from a cul-de-sac, and up until now, we have zero problems with any of them. In fact, my grandfather was usually more than happy to give permission to neighbors who politely asked him to use his land, given they had a good reason. One of these neighbors had asked my grandfather if he could dump the sticks and leaves in his yard over the stone wall. and my grandfather agreed that he rarely uses that part of the property anyway. This will be important later. My grandfather is very healthy for his age, and still strong as an ox. That being said, he has a few minor health issues, including vertigo spells. So I've been trying to help him around the yard more and more, as well as just to stay active outside away from crowds with this virus going around. Recently, I've started the project of cleaning up the underbrush around the wooded area. A large pine had fallen a few months before and almost hit one of the porches in the cul-de-sac. My grandfather cut up the tree and removed the pieces in the neighbor's yard, but it was too deep in the woods to pull them out with the tractor. This led to me going back to that pine tree and trying to clear a path back to the house from there. I was behind the stone wall cutting and pulling up seedlings when I heard the glass door of the cul-de-sac house open and an angry lady storming out onto the porch in a bathrobe. She was much younger than a typical Karen. I would say mid-20s.
What are you doing here? You can't be here.
Why not?
Because you're trespassing, dumb kid. You think you can just hang out in the woods behind my house with my kids inside? Get the hell out of here before I call the cops.
At this point, I'm just looking at her trying to figure out what to say. I mean, I get it. It can be a little weird seeing someone in the woods behind your house if you haven't seen them before. Ma'am, I'm sorry if I scared you, but my family owns this part of the woods. I'm just cleaning up back here. Remember me and my grandfather were back here a few months back to take care of that tree that fell down? I just need to clear a path so we can get it out of here. At this point, I thought it was purely a misunderstanding. But she said,
Don't be ridiculous. Those were laborers my boyfriend's dad hired. You don't own the land. My boyfriend's dad owns all of this.
Then she gestures with her hand.
Now I'll tell you one more time to get out before I call the cops.
Now I'm thinking I might be dealing with a genuine idiot, as outside our property boundaries the woods are owned by the town water plant and don't have public access. But I'm also taken aback that she referred to us as laborers. I tell her, guess you're going to have to call the cops then, because I ain't moving. I don't care what you, your boyfriend, or your boyfriend's dad says. I shrug as I lean back against the wall and pull out my phone to call my grandfather to tell him where I was. He tells me he'll be there in a few minutes and to hang tight. She then dramatically proceeds to call 911 and tells him there is a shady individual on her property refusing to leave and that she's afraid for her life. I start getting nervous at this point, even though all I have on me is a hooked branch cutter. So I call the police non-emergency number, briefly explain the situation as just a land dispute that got out of hand, and that I'm unarmed and waiting on my own property, and that I have never left my own property. He assured me that it will be settled when the officers arrived, which didn't help my nerves. Just then I hear my grandfather pull up and see him walking through the yard towards us. She screams,
What? Stay back! You can't come into my yard!
Grandfather growls, Keep your mouth shut, you dumb broad. He growled as he walked over to me and climbed over the wall, so he was on my side. Now who the hell do you think you are and why are you yelling at my granddaughter?
My boyfriend's dad owns all of this, and both of you are going to get arrested for trespassing.
My grandfather let out a dramatic, indignant laugh. Oh, did he tell you that? Well, you're in for quite the shock, and your boyfriend's dad is in for quite the talk. After them yelling back and forth for a few minutes, 2 cop cars pull up and 3 officers come walking into the yard. As soon as they do, she starts screaming again about how we have no right to be in the woods behind her house where we can't see her kids inside. One of the cops looks to my grandfather and says, Sir, do you own the property behind this wall? Yes, sir, I do. He pulls out his wallet to show his address. The cop eyeing his license, Sir, this address is down the street. I say, correct, but if you look on Google Maps, It shows the property boundaries of that address reach out through the woods and ends at this wall. I hand him my phone, which already has Google Maps open, showing our exact location within the boundary of the property. The other cop says, "Yep, she's right. So what were you all doing back here if you don't mind me asking?" We explained the situation of the tree and how we were working to remove the remnants. Meanwhile, the other officer was taking a statement from the entitled mother. Grandfather says, "I know the owner of this house. He's a good guy. I give him permission to dump his leaves and the stuff behind the wall. But I've never seen her before, so I don't know where she got those crazy ideas. But I'm definitely going to have a talk with Frank, the owner of the entitled mother's house and the father of the entitled mother's baby daddy. I will talk to him when he gets home." The officer says, "She already called him up and he's on his way now. Do you mind sticking around for a little until he gets here?" "Sure, we got nothing to do." The cops walked us to my grandfather's truck where we waited about 10 minutes for Frank to pull in. When he did, he immediately walked over to the truck. Frank says my grandfather's first name and my name and asks, "What's going on? Someone was hiding out in the woods? Are you okay? Did you see him?" To clarify, we had an issue in the past with people running from cops and hiding in our woods. It took a second for us to realize he thought that maybe the entitled mother saw one. We came to chase him out. I tell him, not exactly. At this point, two cops are around us again. But being two old guys who obviously pose zero threat, they are noticeably relaxed and kind of let them talk it out. Frank explains that the entitled mother is the granddaughter's mother, and his son had made some mistakes, and currently both were staying with him while they tried to find a place of their own. And he thinks maybe his son told some lies to make him look better. My grandfather says, "Well, I hate to say it, but your son made some big mistakes. She's crazy." Frank tells him, "Oh, you have no idea." The other cop is still talking to the entitled mother, who won't stop screaming about not wanting us to be able to see into the living room, especially my grandfather, and she calls him a creepy old man. My blood is boiling at this point. My grandpa is the type of person who will gladly throw his life away to save a child, any child, even strangers. Frank heard this too and ordered the entitled mother inside at once. He told the cops he needed to have a talk with both her and his son about their living situation, but they might want to remain nearby in case she tries to call again for whatever reason. Me and my grandfather are given the clear to go but leave our contact information. Found out later that week that the entitled mother was getting evicted for a number of reasons, with this little incident being the last straw. He's also filing for custody of his granddaughter because the entitled mother refuses to get a job, yet still has money for weed, yet keeps asking Frank for money to take care of his daughter. I really feel bad for her in this situation, but I have no sympathy for the entitled mother whatsoever. Entitlement at its best. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.